Welcome to the 50 Shades Greener podcast, the show where three widely different worlds collide in the most chaotic way possible. Hosted by me, Raquel, the Spanish eco queen adopted by Ireland 20 something years ago, Kiri, the Amsterdam based loony with zero filter, and Nasia, our Dublin based princess bringing spice and sense. We're here to unpack culture, identity, sustainability, and all the madness in between. Three women, three backgrounds, one microphone, and absolutely no filters. So let's begin. Today, we're going to follow up from last week's podcast on big food and big pharma companies and try to address that question. Are they screwing with us? Are they poisoning us? So, same as last week, I would like to kick things off today with a bit of a rant. So, what if I told you that one of the world's biggest food corporations openly announced that it wanted to create a business somewhere between food and pharmaceuticals? And this is not a conspiracy theory and not an internet rumor. It's actually the words of Nestlé. The more I researched this episode, the angrier I got. Because it isn't just about food anymore. This is about a system where corporations can profit from both sides of the same crisis. First, by selling ultra processed foods linked to chronic disease, as we discussed last week, and then by investing in the solutions. So, to start with some facts, in 2010, Nestlé, the chocolate cereal and coffee giant, launched a division called Nestlé Health Science. It's laughable. And at that launch, Nestlé's chairman, Peter Brabeck, made a remarkable statement. He said Nestlé wanted to help create a new industry between food and pharma. Those were his own words. Nestlé also created something called the Nestlé Institute of Health Science, another laughable word, focused on biomedical research, personalized nutrition, and disease-related nutrition science. The company believed the future of profit wasn't just snacks and frozen meals anymore. It was medical nutrition, supplements, microbiome science, obesity management, and disease prevention. In other words, they saw healthcare becoming the next food market. And maybe the most important thing to understand here is that Nestlé was not pretending to become a pharmaceutical company, but they were creating like a hybrid category, something in between. And that should really make us all stop and think, because at the same time, corporations are moving into wellness and therapeutic nutrition, while our modern food systems were becoming increasingly dominated by ultra-processed foods made by these same companies. Cheap ingredients, excess sugar, artificial flavor systems, and we now know from extensive research that diets of high ultra-processed foods are associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, and inflammatory disorders. Now, to make a point very clear, no single company has caused diseases by itself, and not every processed food is evil either. But the overall system absolutely matters, because when a corporation profits from highly processed foods while simultaneously invested in supplements, medical nutrition, gut health science, people are right to ask those difficult questions. So corporations realize something enormous, that the future isn't just treating illness, the future is monetizing the entire health journey. And this is the part that generally makes me really angry, because ordinary people like you and me are stuck in the middle of this money-making machine. Families are overwhelmed by confusion and food labels, aggressive marketing tactics, addictive product engineering, rising healthcare costs, chronic fatigue, etc. And meanwhile, multinational corporations position themselves as both the supplier of the problem and the supplier of the solution. So maybe the real question is, what happens when illness itself becomes one of the most profitable economic ecosystems? And for those of you that might be thinking, I don't buy Nestlé products, think again. We all do. They own thousands of brands, including Nescafe, Nespresso, Starbucks, Nestea, Kit Kat, Smarties, Milky Bar, all of them, including cereals. So that's my rant for today. What are we thinking, girls? Nasia, any thoughts
Yeah,
on
I mean
that?
it's crazy, you know. I just feel like let's just zoom out from all of this, okay? And if you just look at food, you look at health, you look at hormones, you just start to realize that health in a way it's not personal anymore. You know, it's just so economic, you know,
Yeah.
it's a market in itself, and I will come to that again later. But you know, companies that are influencing what we eat, and then how we farm, and then how we are treating our illnesses, they are all connected, right? So I
Mm.
think, like we had discussed the last time, and where I think both Katie and I got convinced that it's perhaps intentional, the more I researched for this part two, I realized it really is,
Yeah.
there's a market there, right? It's publicly traded. It talks about business. It talks about profitability. And when those terms come in, it actually just means that keeping you sick is what is making companies richer. Their performance is measured in growth, in revenue, in
Mhm.
shareholder returns. And if they're performing well, really happy days, right? But if
Doesn't
not,
matter. The
then
rest doesn't matter.
yeah, the
Yeah.
rest doesn't matter. And I think that's what's coming out even from Nestle, Growing up, I felt Nestle was one of the most trusted brands,
So
because
did I.
exactly everyone used it. Everyone was like, okay, their products, their dairy products, the best in the market. Nescafe coffee, I remember they had these little sachets. I remember carrying them around in college, right? And then to realize that it was all a farce. And then that's where trust is lost, honestly, because it
Yeah.
goes back to us being like, okay, we need to look at every single ingredient on that sachet to be like, okay, do I need to be consuming this or not, right? So I think it's also a case of just losing trust in brands, if nothing else.
Yeah.
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 Completely. And so if I can jump in, just talking about Nestle being that kind of trusted thing, because they position themselves as this like family
Mm.
friendly. We've got snacks, we've got things, we've got stuff for
You
everyone.
see
We've
the
got
ads,
baby
yeah, it's always
formula.
families and kids and their moms, and
Yeah. So you're
it's
like,
just
oh,
all
they
so
care
wholesome.
about me. Yeah. They care about our health. It's yeah, exactly. It's wholesome. But it's it's not.
It's
It's
not.
fucked.
It's a lie.
It's demented,
It's
really, when you think about it.
yeah.
It's absolutely demented. Like, what is it? But what are our leaders doing about this as well? At the end of the day, all of our politicians, they have a responsibility to
They've got
protect us,
investments.
Yeah.
but
They're
they
part
don't. They
owners.
protect them, not us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I think, wild. And, just quickly about the Nestle thing, back in the 70s, they really heavily marketed baby formula to like global South poor countries. They would go into
Madness.
hospitals and convince capably, like women who are capable of breastfeeding, convince them that formula is better. I even remember being a little
Yeah.
kid and hearing, my mom was a medical doctor and there was like this buzz about no, but formula is better for your baby. That was a Nestle campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Complete,
later,
complete lie.
you know,
Complete lie.
complete lie.
I
Like,
mean,
why on earth?
They,
Why on
like
and
they
earth do you
base,
think that?
yeah,
people that have the least amount of resources then as well, it's just
yeah.
pure
Forced.
evil, really, like when you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about it.
They're
Yeah.
basically saying something natural is not as good as something chemical.
That you can pay for.
Make that make sense.
Yeah. That you can pay for. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Anyways, I'll get off the Nestle train.
yeah.
Because it really gets me angry.
We could do a whole podcast on just Nestle,
True.
but we're not going. Well, maybe we will down the line, but we're not doing that today.
Yeah.
You never know, never say never. But Kiri, you've done some more research in this area as well. Enlighten us.
I have, and it's again, like like you said, the more research we do, the more angry we get, because what I was kind of thinking about with this whole food systems thing is how it is so rooted in colonialism and racism, and it is basically the modern day global food system was built during colonialism.
Yeah.
Europeans they colonized, they forced communities to grow cash crops in service of European communities, right? This is why we get certain ingredients from places where that's not where, that ingredient
It
is
should
indigenous
be.
from. That's not what farmers were ever growing, but it's because back in colonialism, they were like, we need these crops for Europe. So they bought land, they took over, they, forced farmers to farm these cash crops. And now it's that system has never changed. It was rooted in that, and it's the same system. So you see it that a lot of countries, for example, in the global south or in, third world or however you want to define it, they continue to export raw agricultural commodities to Europeans at much lower prices. And because when they changed over their agricultural systems to be these cash crops, they lost that ability to like be growing food for themselves. So then these communities became reliant on imported products. Even though the land is fertile, there's water, they have infinite capability of growing their own food, we still see that there's now this reliance on imported products and imported processed products, which are much more expensive than what they are selling, what they're exporting as these cash crops. So it's all just rooted in this, colonialism, and we see it today.
So we're keeping them poor again because it is costing them more to buy than what they're selling. And not only that, I'm assuming as well that when we changed, when we decided to place these new products to grow in those countries, we destroy their ecosystems as well, because we're bringing in species that don't belong to that ecosystem. So it's an environmental issue as much as a social issue. And then like think about all this food flying around the place, the emissions of food transportation alone. I love it when I see we have beautiful apples in Ireland. I go to the supermarket and they make me buy Spanish apples, and I'm like, I don't want a fucking Spanish apple. I'll go to Spain if I want to eat Spanish
exactly. No, it's true, because also with the modern day agricultural system, it's all monocrops. So you grow one thing, there's no replenishing of the soil, there's no regenerative agriculture, which before colonialism, it was all regenerative agriculture, because you were growing a variety of products at a smaller scale, and that's what was sustainable. So it all like links together. And even in there was a 2021 report that was saying that the poorest countries pay more for food imports than they earn from food exports. So not only are not only are the ecosystems being ruined, not only is their capability for growing other things becoming limited because of soil erosion and nutrient depletion and all these things, but again, they're earning very little for what they're exporting, even though the whole world relies on it, right? Like there are so many countries in the north that can't grow crops themselves because the soil's just not very good, or they don't have access to the water. And yet we're free and breezy. We're relaxed. We're chilling. We're selling back.
Supermarkets are full.
Exactly. Supermarkets are full. We're selling back our ultra processed food at a profit.
Yeah.
So it's And then no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kiri. Sorry.
No. I just to kind of continue the thought process a little bit. We're talking about the monopoly of Nestlé and things, and there are 4 companies. So I discovered this in my research for this podcast. 4 companies that control approximately 60% of the global commercial seed market. Okay. And they have done it in such a way that local farmers that don't want to use Monsanto genetically modified seeds, if they've made it legally so difficult for farmers to, rotate their own seeds the way they've always done, because maybe your farm is neighboring a farm that uses Monsanto seeds, right? The wind blows, plants get fertilized. If they come in and they find genetically modified seeds on your land, even though you're doing your best to avoid it, they'll sue you. They'll sue you, and they'll use it as grounds to try and take over your farm. And there's studies of this happening.
They probably succeed as well in taking over your farm.
Of course they do. They're giants. They've got legal teams out the wazoo.
Yeah. The system is bought.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. I think we need to stop doing podcasts about food.
I know.
It's really upsetting.
I know. Don't even get me started on. Don't even get me started on like in the United States, or in Western countries or developed countries, the discrepancy where of marginalized communities within those countries, they have less access to groceries, they have less access to fruits and vegetables. They're predominantly more processed food advertisements are more prominent in these communities. So the people who are suffering are the marginalized people. Anyway, the whole system is just really, really fucked.
They get sicker, and they don't have money for healthcare, and
they're abandoned. They get in debt. They stay poor. That debt gets passed on to their children, who then can't climb out of it because their parents had diabetes, and it's a whole.
I mean, we touched on this before in another episode. Is it that for people like us to continue to have whatever level of, you know, wealth that we have, obviously, compared to many other people? Does it need to be poor people in the world, you know? Because it seems like the rich ones want to make other people poorer. So
Yeah.
where is the
Always.
balance? You know,
Yeah.
and maybe that deserves its own research for another podcast.
We're gonna have to pepper in some like more positive podcasts that don't make
We're
me
gonna have to.
rage.
Yeah, balance it out.
Yeah.
And the positive news, it is really easy to make your own food. So we will put some recipes as well at some point, I'm
We
sure.
should do
Yeah. In the
Just to try and
comments.
avoid all these processed foods.
Yeah.
But Nessa, you were taking a different angle on your research today. So do you want to share maybe some things you found out?
Yeah. I think a lot of it has already been touched upon. It's just about how, like, you know, the system is so rigged that it's keeping people dependent on the system. You know, it's not really working towards making people healthy, because you can't make money out of that. If everyone is healthy, nobody is buying medicines, right? So that's not essentially the system. And if you look around us, so Monsanto came up, of course, and Monsanto was actually bought or rather acquired by Bayer, which is one of the largest German biotechnology companies. Okay, so that's basically food systems, chemicals, and then pharmaceuticals now are all sitting under one umbrella, and they are being traded on the market. So it's basically a corporation now. It's publicly traded, and of course, it will do well only when it reads the labels of growth and profitability. Like I said, it's increasing the market value, and that's literally the model. Okay. And what happened is Bayer, their shares jumped after they had these very, I think, stronger than expected profits, which were tied to some research they did in like crop science performance. Part two for that too, probably. You know, but I just realized that if a company is essentially doing crop science performance studies, which is basically, again, genetic modification of our food, and you have Monsanto sitting with them as well, which is, you know, seed fertilization. It is very easy that something can go wrong somewhere, because at the end of the day, they're just using chemicals, and it's again processed food. And then that same processed food is coming into our systems. I don't think it's going to keep us healthy, right? None of it makes sense because it's all genetically modified. And I think I said in the last episode as well that food has to be in unison with the normal bodily function, right? Anything alien will keep us sick. And the fact is that when you go to a supermarket, there's just more and more of this processed food. So the alternate is either you grow your own food. In most cases, you can't, or you could keep consuming what is in the supermarket, which is this genetically and, you know, processed food, which will keep you sick, which is great because then insurance providers keep a share out of it. They get a cut out of it because you're buying heavy insurances to keep yourself in check in case you land up going to a hospital for any treatments that you need. So the whole system is just a loop, you know. Don't keep them very sick, but just slightly sick so
Sick
that
enough.
they keep coming
Enough.
back for treatment. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
because
don't
some
kill
people
our
say,
customers, but make
Yeah.
them buy your
There you
pharmaceuticals.
go.
Exactly.
There you
And
go.
I think that's where the science is going. That's where the research is going, that how do you keep that balance maintained where somebody is sick enough, but well enough to go earn the money which they will give us for their treatment, right? So we keep earning money while somebody is like really slogging it off to earn the finances they need to keep their systems healthy because they don't have an alternate to keep themselves healthy. So yeah, that was essentially what came up. And then one last bit was that there were reports showing that some of the largest healthcare corporations in the US, for instance, avoided billions in taxes while they increased their shareholder payouts and just executive compensation, even as patients of that company dealt with higher costs and understaffed facilities. And then that's what I started asking myself, like, what exactly is being optimized here? Is it actually health or is it the system? And essentially,
system.
it's the system.
Yeah.
It's
You're
their
not,
bank accounts, really, Nasia. It's not, they're
yeah,
squishing from everywhere. Their
yeah,
own
exactly.
workforce, their clients, the public
Yeah,
healthcare systems, they're squishing
all,
money out of everywhere. And like you say, it's that
yeah,
circle, like, oh,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
infuriating. And then I go back to our world leaders, and as we discussed last week, on Monday,
Yeah.
next Monday, 18th of May, the EU are voting on this
Yeah.
new idiotic legislation in which they will, I think,
Yeah.
bring in genetically modified crops and not
Yeah.
have to put a sticker to say they're genetically modified. And that is just terrifying, absolutely
Exactly.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
see what happens Monday.
I
Yeah.
know.
Don't have high hopes. I'm afraid
Yeah.
it's just.
I don't either. No, I don't either. But I think
Yeah.
I'm struggling. I'm really, and we're sitting and chatting, and I'm thinking like, okay, what is like a positive? What's a takeaway that we can give to our viewers to say if you want to try to not be so looped into this system, what can we do? And I'm honestly even struggling to find, because it's so, like you said, Nestle owns everything. Monsanto is the Bayer Monsanto Corp owns,
Yeah.
they're one of the 4 that own all of seed. Like what do we do?
Yeah, it's just it's back a bit like we were saying last week as well. It's back about really understanding what it is that we're eating, right? And maybe
Yeah.
placing what we eat at a higher degree of importance within our daily lives, because
Yeah.
we've also
And
the
check.
system has also created this society where we don't have time.
Yeah.
Everybody's rushing around and to do this and to do that. So sometimes the easiest thing is to pick up a takeaway meal or stick something in the microwave.
Yeah.
Whether if we took a bit more time, to cook our own food, to select our food properly, and it just takes longer. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the stopper, because we're all in a rush. But
Yeah.
supporting your local farmers, going to farmers
Yeah.
markets and buying the produce directly for the farmers. So you're taking out also the supermarkets
middlemen.
and a lot of those
Yeah.
fertilizers and a lot of those things. And then cooking your own food, making your own bread is super easy. It's really, really super easy. I will definitely do a video and put it up. I make brown bread and white bread every single week.
Yep.
I make my own pasta now because I don't even trust the pasta.
Yeah. I know.
But it requires time, and that's
Yeah, but that's the thing. You need to
something
have the
people don't
luxury
have.
of, the luxury of time, like luxury of like ingredients and resources.
Yeah.
Not everyone has, and that's the
Not
thing. Like,
everyone has that.
Yeah.
what's being pushed into our systems is just processed food, and not everyone is going to look at the ingredients. Most of them will be like, you know what, I don't have an alternate. I'm just going to, pick it up. Right? Because
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
just what is available.
Yeah.
And that's my issue, that why is it that the system is built in a way that it's allowing, corrupt food like that? Like, food is nutrition. How can you corrupt that? It's the essence
There's
of,
corruption in food, corruption in health,
Yeah.
corruption.
Yeah.
right? And that's
Education.
bizarre. Yeah, it's all about just monetizing every single thing that, humanity and humans need to like live. I think the next thing that they'll be targeting is oxygen, putting, I don't know,
Oh,
price
stop
tag to
it, Nat.
oxygen.
I
Who
know.
knows? I saw
They're going
this
to be
reel.
like the cyanobacteria then.
Yeah, exactly.
What a great way to link all of the podcasts into the one.
I know.
Well, ladies, that's all we have time for today. I'm sorry, because this is such an interesting topic and something that needs to be spoken about more often. We're all crossing our fingers for Monday that our amazing EU leaders are going to make the right decision and say no to this new legislation. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Let's see. And in the meantime, Raquel, I think that was really great advice, that if you have the capability to slow down, take the time to look at the ingredients to make your own stuff. If you're, if you have the luxury of being able to carve out that time, do it.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
a little half an hour every day.
Yeah. Yeah. This is how we fight
Would
the
work
system, by
wonders.
slowing down.
Also,
Yeah.
doctors aren't evil. It's the system, unfortunately, that might make them evil.
Yes.
They're trying to
Very,
help.
very true.
They're
They
trying to help. Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it there, ladies. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you want us to speak about any specific topic, leave us a comment below. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.